Good evening, Dr. Grunfeld and my fellow GEB classmates. I understand tonight's game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals, but if you could give me 5 or so minutes of your time, I'd like to go over the 8 key points towards effective communication. We'll jump right into it with point 1, which is the source. Now, the source is simply the person giving the speech, but the source also gets to select how they deliver their speech through a few elements that are more inclusive than just proper grammar and using empowering words or grab words to keep the audience attention. Now, these include tone, include body language, and choice of clothing. For example, for this presentation, I wanted to wear my nice polo FAU shirt because it promotes a sense of casualness while also promoting a sense of professionalism. The casualty, I want to encourage people to give me feedback, and professionalism, I'd like respect from the get-go when delivering my message. Now we'll move into the message portion of it, and as quoted by S. McLean, the message is the stimulus or meaning produced by the source for the audience or receiver. Now, conveying your message effectively, as I said, takes much more than well-structured sentences and empowering grammar. Your selection of clothing and even the theme of the room is going to help determine the way the receivers portray your message. Now, a good way to structure your message, whether it's oral or written, is you first begin with your thesis or the premise of what you're trying to say. You follow it up with facts, and you end with an empowering fact or opinion that'll hopefully finally sway the audience in your direction. Now, you're not necessarily trying to convince them to think your way. You're trying to get them to understand where you're coming from and perhaps open their mind up a little more. The next part is the way the message is delivered, and the message is delivered through point 3, which is known as a channel. For example, the channel we're using right now is this video recording through screencast, but there are many other forms for oral and even visual communication. Other channels will include face-to-face conversations, phone calls, radio, and television. And it's my understanding from my own research that a channel can be sort of defined as the sum of the parts that relay your message. Now, these include grammar, emphasis, body language, amongst other things. And if the parts that sum up your channel don't coincide with the message you're delivering, you're at risk of the audience only somewhat understanding what you're saying or misdelivering or just partially delivering your message. Now, your message is being delivered for a receiver, and the receivers are simply defined as the recipient of your message. Now, depending on your message delivery and the channel selected for the delivery, your message to the receiver can either be interpreted as intended or misinterpreted as a whole. Now, the receivers, they use a number of senses to interpret your message. In this one, for example, you're using both oral skills, you see me, my body language, and auditory skills based on my tone and my grammar. Now, as the source, you can adjust the delivery of your message based on the body language and facial expressions of the recipients, which leads us to our next topic, feedback. Now, whether it's intentional or unintentional, when responding to the source, the receiver is giving the source feedback. Now, feedback, simply defined, is a message the receiver sends to the source. To the source, feedback is incredibly valuable and probably can be underrated in some forms of speech because it allows them a chance to adjust the method of delivering their message so that they can portray their theories more accurately to the recipients. Now, feedback is also very valuable for the receivers who are trying to understand the source's message. It gives them a chance to ask for clarification or even to agree or disagree with the point, so it becomes more interactive and involved, and maybe they even think about the message some more. Now, something previously mentioned too is going to be the next point that helps predetermine the tone you set for your message is the environment. Now, environment, it's much more than just the room you present. It includes the clothing, it includes the lighting, it includes the auditory quality. For example, I dimmed the lights in this room so there wouldn't be as much reflection coming out of the glass door or out of the painting over here. And I also selected to do it in front of this brown mural because the colors are somewhat muted, and so hopefully more attention will be paid to me in my navy blue shirt standing in front of it. Other factors of environment are all these factors. They give the receiver a predetermined idea of how the message is going to be, for lack of a better term. It's going to give the receivers an idea of whether it's going to be formal, informal, professional, casual, and even whether feedback is encouraged or not before the source even speaks. So, because it directly affects the receiver's interpretation of your message, it is incredibly important to select an environment that coincides with the message you're trying to deliver. Now, the next point is going to be context. Now, the context of message delivery depends on personal, environmental, or even biological cues. If there are numerous receivers gathered in an environment to listen to a source's message, they may not perceive that environment the same. Now, an example I've come with, say I have a message to deliver and I chose to do it in a classroom in front of numerous receivers. One receiver may associate the classroom with pressure from their parents to perform well, and when they sit down, be quiet, attentive, and try to learn. On the other hand, say one of the other receivers is a formal student athlete. Now, they might associate the classroom with goofing off and a sense of being more casual, and may not take it as seriously or even pay attention as attentively. So, another example I really enjoyed from the books is an example of context is business meetings. Usually it's going to be the highest ranking employee that's going to act as the source, and everyone else in the room is simply receivers giving feedback to the source. So I thought that was very interesting, and hopefully you've been with me this whole way, because the next point is actually interference. Now, interference is just another term for noise, and noise isn't just auditory. Noise is anything that distracts you from being in the present, like being stuck in your head, being hungry, being in a warm room, any form of distraction. Or for example, say the source relays a message or is in the middle of relaying a message and you can directly relate to an experience he is saying. Your mind might wander and it's going to bring you back to how you felt during that experience and the context you're in which you received it. Now you might snap back into reality and you might have missed a whole lot about what the source was saying. So it may have forced the receiver to misinterpret a message, actually. Noise will always be around, and it's not necessarily a duty of the source to mitigate it, but if they can mitigate it even just a little bit more than originally by choosing a proper environment, they are lessening the risk of the receivers misinterpreting the source's message. All in all, those are the 8 tools towards effective communication. Once again, my name is Jesse Transleau. I hope this helped out a lot, and have a great evening. Let's go St. Louis Blues.